Hey, good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, and good morning to those of you out in the Pacific or on the West Coast. Excited to be here for another day of sales training in the federal space. Hey, one thing I wanted to point out is that if you haven't tracked on this already, we put out a new August version of the Small Business Directory. You can find that on my profile. You can also find that on the www.govconchamber.com website. It's a free download of over 1,000 names, numbers, and email addresses for small business professionals and small business liaison officers at large primes in particular. It actually has a bunch of other people in there, 7 mentors. If you haven't heard me talk about that, you'll learn more. But it's designed to really accelerate your outreach into the federal agencies and into the buyers, right? By giving you access to a bunch of people's names and numbers so you don't have to look for it. The Navy just recently said that they're going to start. In fact, they did do this. If you go to their website, they got rid of all names of small business professionals and all phone numbers and email addresses. And they just put in like a generic thing, let's say NAVC or something, and a generic email address, which is just crazy. It's on one hand, not to go off and complain, but on one hand, DoD is complaining about they can't find the buyer. And on the other hand, they're making it harder for small businesses to reach the very people who are the liaisons between industry and the buyer. So, but anyways, the Small Business Directory, a lot of information in there, and we always aim to have actual phone numbers and actual email addresses. And so we just did a lot of updates. So we put them into that August directory. And ironically, as soon as we published it, we got a bunch of people coming back saying, hey, there's this person or that person, which is awesome because it's crowdsourcing the quality of the directory. So I hope you go get that. Let me just switch over to make sure I have my slides and the things I want to share with you today, because I'm going to go back and forth between sharing my screen and not. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my daily training on federal sales. It's where I discuss processes and procedures for you to have success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner. And then since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. Process goes from A to Z. And when we follow the steps in between, we achieve the outcome and the results that we're looking for. Today, we're going to talk about how to grow deeper into an agency. And so what this means is you've already got some traction in there as a subcontractor or prime. How do you go way deeper? And so that's what the purpose of today's training is going to be. Before we get started, do me a favor and help buyers and me remember who you are. Put your company name and core competency using 2 or 3 words into the chat. It'll make it easier for people in this community to know who you are and begin to remember who you are. It also helps, in particular, me and buyers who come along. I want to turn off this running thing. There's the website, by the way, if you need it for the graphic. Also, if you haven't been here before to one of my training sessions, I go really fast. You can come back later and look at it. It's designed to give you a good amount of information, a specific task that you can do from here. And so I'm going to give you one today. I don't really pay attention to the chat as we go forward because I want to focus on the training, but I do come back and look at everything afterwards and respond generally pretty quickly. Before I go get lunch, I do my homework and do what I need to do now, which is responding to any questions or comments you have. So let's get started. How to grow deeper in federal agencies. Today, I'm going to cover 5 particular topics, right? One is, what does depth look like in a federal agency? The other is, why is depth in an agency important? Third thing I want to cover is how to grow as a prime. And fourth thing I'm going to do is cover how to grow as a sub if you're in there. And then I'll wrap it all up with a little conclusion at the end. So that's what we're going to cover. And we're going to move pretty fast in here. First thing I wanted to talk about is, what does it look like when we talk about depth? I say this a lot. Many people who advise out there say a similar thing. Don't try to have many agencies that you support, many customers. Have one customer and go really deep and help them, right? And that's why I always talk about finding a customer that's big enough, they spend enough money that you could get a $50 million annual revenue from them. So an example is, if you look at the White House, the executive office of the president, they don't have a lot of money. The chances of you getting that revenue stream is pretty limited. And so you don't have this ability to grow. But if you look at the VA, which is the agency I'm going to use today as an example, The VA is huge. It's the second largest agency out there. I can't remember what their spend is, but I think it was like 240 billion annually. And so they spend a lot of money on all sorts of services. And we'll come back to that in a minute, because at the end, I really want to dive into specifics of going into the VA. But I just wanted to use a little example of my own personal experience as a business owner, small business owner in the federal space. And what I mean by depth. I had a contract, my very first contract with the VA, and it started as a subcontract. And it started in something called the VISN, or the Veterans Integrated Services Network. And basically what that is it's a higher office of 6 hospitals. And so this higher office managed those 6 hospitals. I went in and got a contract to manage the SharePoint services for them, so application development, et cetera. My point is, from there, I was then able to build relationships with the individual hospitals who also had their own budget. And I was able to get contracts with 1 or 2 of those individual ones within VISN 6 is where I started. From there, I then was able to go up to the region, and the region is above this VISN. So I went from the network, or VISN, down to the hospital, and then up to the region, because the region really appreciated what I was doing at this VISN and said, hey, can you do it across the board for us? And so at that point, I'm getting more visibility, and now I'm getting access to like 48 hospitals. And then from the VISN, I went to 2 other places. From the region, that place, I then was able to bounce across the country outside of the VISN and the region I was in to a different region, a different set of network hospitals, still in the VA, but they had heard what I was doing. These hospital doctors, providers were, singing my praises at a conference or things like that they would go to. So now I'm in a different set of hospitals across the country. And the last place I went was headquarters. Our company was able to go up to the national headquarters, where we had been staying away from, right? When you get to the headquarter level, you're competing against Booz Allen and Northrop Grumman. I mean, those were our competitors, Microsoft. When we were down below, no one was really there except for other small businesses, and we could get our experience. So then at the national level, though, they really loved the actual practical experience we had at the hospitals, and they knew we could handle the technology. So the experience and the technology subject matter expertise made us attractive now to the national headquarters people. And that's what I mean by depth, right? I'm bouncing around from hospital to VISN to region to headquarters, right? Spreading across the country from Virginia all the way up into Washington State. And that's what I want you to think about when you're looking at a customer. We often feel this attraction, or FOMO, right? Of if I don't go over to Army and Department of Education and HUD and the VA, if I don't do them all, I'm going to miss out on opportunities. Yes, of course, you're going to miss out on chasing opportunities, but you're not going to miss out on wins. Anybody who's been experienced will tell you the more opportunities we chase that are disparate or not similar, the less likely we're going to win any of them. The more similar the opportunities we chase, the more similar the customers, the more likely we're going to win. So that was just a quick intro to what depth at an agency looks like. Do me a favor, in the chat, what agency, I don't know if it's VA for you. Today I'm going to talk about VA, but if you picked one agency, we're going to dive deep, put that agency in, and I want to see it later myself, but I want those of you who are on the call today to be able to see if others are chasing a similar agency as you, because sometimes that makes a good relationship. So what one agency, department level, whatever, would you chase? Okay, so while you're doing that, I want to talk about why depth is the best, right? Why it's so important. And I've alluded to it a little bit, but I want to give you specific examples. First off, the knowledge that you have in an agency grows. Imagine if you're trying to learn about the Army, learn about the VA, and learn about Department of HHS, for example. The knowledge from one does not go to the other. But if you're in the VA, your knowledge of one hospital begins to help you think about your knowledge, and you can expand that knowledge into another hospital, up to the VISN, the region, the headquarters, because they all kind of speak the same language. We're here to support the veterans. We're here to help them with benefits or healthcare, right? And so your knowledge continues to grow about an agency to the point that you become in that top 1% of people who know about the agency. Most people who work in an agency only know their job, right? They're not responsible for a bunch of other things. If you talk about a nurse or a facilities manager in a hospital, Why would they have any knowledge really about IT or cybersecurity or lawn care, right? They don't. But when you're looking at everything, including the department level goals all the way down to what's going on in the hospital on a day to day. So your knowledge grows, your past performance grows. This is another great thing about focusing on one agency like this and going deep into an agency is that as you have experience, it builds on each other. When you write a proposal and you're going into the VA as an example, your 3 past performances are all VA related. Unless you add value, right? There's a reason to use a different agency. But generally, the VA would want to see 3 past performances within their agency. That would be most ideal from an agency related. So your past performance is able to get stronger on your opportunities or your proposals when you're deep in an agency. The relationships, right? Going with this, I talked about hospitals, and when I meet a pathology chief or director or whatever in a hospital, they know almost everybody else in all the other hospitals. My ability to capitalize on the relationships, John knows Jane, Jane knows Harry, right? That I can keep moving through an agency because everybody kind of knows each other. If you've heard of 6 degrees of separation, that everybody in the world is only 6 degrees, 6 steps away from another person. Well, when you go in deep into an agency, generally it's like 3 degrees of separation. The person you know, or the person you're trying to meet, there's probably 1, 2 people at most in between. And so when you're building relationships deep in an agency, you're able to get more and faster relationships. Imagine meeting a contracting officer in an agency and they can introduce you to another one, or the 2 of them might be able to introduce you to who are the primes, who's the program manager on the current contract. That kind of stuff happens when you go deep in an agency. When you're spread out across a bunch of agencies, you don't really have the ability to build on those relationships, right? Because people tend not to know each other. The people in the Army don't know the people in the Navy, et cetera. And the last one I want to mention on why it's going deep is a really good thing is just the reusability of assets you have, marketing assets. If you create an asset for one part of the VA and it's got a little VA look and feel, or maybe the language you're using is specific to VA's strategic plans, things like that. Well, now when you move across, you don't have to keep changing it. It works in VISN 6 and it works in VISN 21 and VISN 18, right? So across that same department, across that same agency, your marketing material works. When you're thinking about responding to RFIs or sources sought, you've got a standard 80 or 90% language done after 1 or 2 responses that you can submit back. And the same thing with proposals. When you're writing proposals and you got a lot of language in there that's unique to the agency, we understand the mission of the VA is to support the veteran, right? When you go to different departments or agencies, you have to kind of keep changing that to say how you understand them. But once you begin to understand an agency and you write proposals, 3, 4, 5 proposals, you have a very solid way of communicating that you understand their mission and their goals, their challenges, and here's how your solutions and products tie into addressing what they need, their requirements. Okay, so let's talk about how to grow as a prime. And I think I'm going to go through these pretty fast because I want to switch over and show you a couple of documents just to give you an idea of what you could do today in your area. By the way, Gina, I happened to see a comment. Try to go lower than DOD. DOD is, the VA is more like the Army, Navy, or Air Force. Okay, so how to grow as a prime. In no particular order, be on a contract vehicle. So if you're a prime contractor and you're going into the VA, you want to find out what the top 4, 5, 6 contract vehicles are that are in your space, whether it's GSA or VETS 2 or T4 or whatever they are, right? I don't want to claim I know every single contract vehicle out there. But you want to find out, how does your agency buy? What's their most common contract vehicle? And as a prime, you want to get on that contract vehicle. Either you're going to be able to get on it now, or like DLA is coming out with their big IT contract vehicle. I think it's the end of this year, and it's being recompeted so that it starts in 2025 or something. Well, you want to go get on that if you haven't been on it already. So the next thing is you want to have a lot of sub experience. I talked about my experience at a network, and then the hospitals, and then the region, things like that. Well, that was a combination actually of subbing and priming and smaller priming until we got to the national level where we could land a good sized prime up there. But having a lot of sub experience within an agency will enable you to then begin to prime and grow as a prime, because you still have done work in my agency. You understand my needs, your solution fits with those needs, and you have past performance within our organization. You understand how we do software development or how we do construction on new buildings, et cetera. So experience as a sub is a must. And my recommendation is make sure you have a lot of that. And this goes into tip 3 is build agency and office relationships, right? And so in here, what I'm talking about is focused relationships. In a particular office, it's going to buy what you sell. So let's use the VA as an example. And I said the region level. The region level spends a lot, and they're responsible, each region, roughly 40, 50 hospitals. That's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of traction there. So there's a good room for getting contracts up here. I want to build relationships with key decision makers in the region level, and including acquisition people, but most importantly, key program office decision makers. I'm able to look in, find them, and start building that relationship. And so you want to build it very tight as you're a sub in your, or if you're already a prime on smaller projects, build that set of relationships at the office level within the Department of VA or within the Army, whatever it is. But at the office level, that's going to be the program office for what you're doing. In the Navy, it might be PEO Digital for those of you doing Office 365 or SharePoint, right? Really having a strong relationship in there. That takes time. And this goes to my last thing is if you want to grow as a prime within an agency deeper as a prime, look 1 to 4 years out. Don't look inside of 6 months. If you're looking inside of 6 months, you're purely reactionary, right? When you look out a year to 4 years, and by the way, when you start today looking a year out, at some point, you will then be working on stuff today that is due tomorrow, but you've been working on it for a year, if that makes sense, right? So start looking out 1 to 4 years and do true business development, getting in and understanding those opportunities, capture to really develop those opportunities. So you want to have those things in place. Hope that makes sense. As we move from prime, right? How do you grow as a sub? If you're inside of an organization right now, even if you have a small prime, right? How do you grow as a subcontractor? And this is important for people who have a couple of contracts in different places. What I suggest to my customers is pick one agency and let's go build on that. We will maintain the relationship with the existing customers, but this agency is where we're going to go deep. And so one of the first things, and it's just hopefully an obvious thing, but the best way to grow as a prime or a sub is to make sure you're doing great work on the current projects. Not kind of good work, not satisfactory work, great work. And so you and your team need to understand what is great work. Perhaps you should even talk with your core or the contracting officer and say, hey, we're working on this. What do you consider great work? Program manager on your existing. Make sure that when anybody talks to your current program manager, core, or contracting officer, that they're going to look and go, oh, these guys do great work. Even if your CPARs might be something a little different, right? It's important that you at least, if Jane talks to Paula over here, that they go, oh, yeah, no, I love Paula and her company. They do great work, right? They can talk to each other. They do. We all talk to each other. So number one, do great work on current projects. Number two is identify strategic teaming partners. And these are companies. I did a whole training, and Gus, maybe you can find the number and put it in the chat. But I did training on strategic partners. You want to find 8 strategic partners. And if you're going into the VA, let's use that as an example, then you want to find 8 strategic teaming partners who already have existence within the VA. You want them to be prime contractors doing 5, 10 million plus, even including large primes, a couple of them that are doing work. But identify who these teaming partners are, because when you think about subcontracting, it should come from a plan, a process to win that subcontract. And the process of hearing about an opportunity, well, that's like way down the line. You want to shift left. If my hands are moving the right direction, you want to shift left earlier in the process to be having these relationships. With teaming partners, you want to make sure that they know that you're the right company for them to put on the team, because you will help them win. Not because you're a woman-owned or a veteran-owned small business, but because you are the best company to do the work that they have going out there. So I talked earlier about, as a prime, you want to get on a contract vehicle as a prime contract holder. As a sub, you want to find out those same contract vehicles and then go get on a team. It really is not hard, and it comes from relationships. You build a relationship with a company that has that prime contract vehicle. You begin to work with them to develop that relationship, and when it's right, they'll either invite you on, or you then can ask to be put on as what I call a named or unnamed teaming partner. So a named one is the government knows about you, and maybe it says like Booz Allen plus these 5 companies. Most times you're just going to be an unnamed teammate. And what that means is they'll send you an email anytime task orders come out. That's all you want. You want to be hearing about opportunities that you can respond back to Booz Allen, let's say, and say, hey, I can do that work. We can help out with task area 5 or whatever, right? So there's a whole training I do on expanding upon that, but find primes that have the vehicles that your agency uses. By the way, does anybody who's sure about your agency, do you know what your number 1 contract vehicle is being used in that? If you do, put it in chat. I'd love to see what contract vehicles you're tracking on. Number 4, identify all business development and capture folks. So when you have strategic partners, go out to LinkedIn and find out who are all the people doing business development and capture for this company, and then try to filter it down even more to the ones that are doing work in your agency. So if you're lucky, it says, hey, I do Air Force capture for Booz Allen. Perfect. I'm going to chase on that. By the way, I keep saying Booz Allen, but remember, 6 of the 8 strategic partners should be small businesses. But find somebody who does, says Air Force business development for Booz Allen. Or if they just say business development for Booz Allen, it just means you have to do your work. Hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. I'm going into the Air Force. Are you focused on Air Force or somewhere else? And no matter what they say, it's going to be good for you, because if it's Air Force, great. Can we keep talking? If it's not Air Force, you go, hey, John, I appreciate you getting back to me. Are you able to tell me who's in charge of the Air Force, or who's doing BD for the Air Force, or maybe who's doing BD, running BD for the DoD, for example, because then I can go that way. All you're trying to do is get an introduction or a name from them. Okay, last step is come with a very specific core competency. If you want to grow as a subcontractor, do not come with many things that you offer. If I'm telling you, get away from many agencies and bring it down into one agency, Department of VA, Air Force, HUD, whatever, that is vital to your success. Well, also vital to your success is take all the things you do and bring it down to the one thing you do better than anybody else, right? So in my last company, it was SharePoint. We did that as good as Microsoft, or better even, because we were in the DoD, where Microsoft was everywhere around the globe. And so we knew our customer, and we knew SharePoint, which is a Microsoft product. You need to do the same thing, whether you're service-based or product-based, because when you can bring that focus to your strategic partners, they will sit there and the conversation will quickly go, do I want you to fit in that spot or not? And remember, some will, some won't. That's okay, right? But if you can communicate clearly what your specific core competency in is, the other person can go, I see you fitting right here on this opportunity we're going after. I'd love to have you on the team. Okay, so again, fire hose of information. I wanted to share something on my screen. By the way, if this is making sense, and thanks for those of you who are putting that information in there. If this is making sense, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up or something just to let me know that you're tracking on it. But I did want to share a post that I did today. Let me bring it up. So I shared this post today, and I'm assuming you can see my screen, but I shared this post today, and this is 40 organizational charts for the VA. When I'm saying go deep into an agency, the agencies tell you how to go deep. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's harder, but this particular document, right, I'm able to go through and look at how the VA is organized at the higher level. And then as I'm coming down, I'm getting into the deeper level. Here's one on data governance for you and analytics services, architecture integration. I don't know what that is, but for those of you in the data space, right there, that's an office worth communicating with maybe, or the VA Innovation Center. This idea of being able to even know what is the office, what are the offices that are out there, so that you can begin to look at it. For security people, there's some of that. I was going to come down here to a couple others that are construction based, right? So here's police, but here's IT, all the IT stuff for anybody thinking about it, cybersecurity, et cetera. You can find that down here. And then there's just this slew, and I'm trying to get down here a little faster. Here it is. So logistics, in here, it's got logistics and construction. So this one talks about the Office of Acquisition, Logistics, and Construction. It's broken up into these three groups. And so as you come down into my org charts, the way I laid them out from the VA, you can see them then broken down further into lower offices. So here I'm able to see, and let me zoom in a little bit for you. Here I can see that they've got, this is the TAC, the Technical Acquisition Center, but Director of Logistics Support Services. Let's just use that as an example. I can see that there's two offices. Do I know these offices? Have I reached out to them? If I haven't, then let me try to do that. Here's another one that's on facility management. And this one is really interesting to me because I don't know what your space is, but I did a post earlier in the week about sustainment, et cetera. Here's environmental services. Does that fit into you if you're doing sustainment? Right here is data management logistics. We're in a logistics department or office within the VA, but they have data management. And this is why I say that even if you look at a construction project, you can find work that might be let out that relates to workforce development, that relates to IT or project management, asset management. All of those org charts came from this document. It's 459 pages. And when you come through here, the VA just lays out, let me come up here. And I know I'm zooming pretty fast. It's a little tight on time here. But when I come down here, here's a Portfolio Management Directorate, right? It gives me an overview and it tells me what they do. What I want to encourage you to do is to go find a similar document that lays out what do each of the offices within the within your target agency, right? What do the offices do? So those activities are giving you guidance on what that office does so that you can align your core competencies to it. Again, a really fast way of going in here. The thing I want to leave you with as it relates to what I'm sharing is that you just want to find these strategic documents because as you go deep into an agency, it begins with research, right? I talk about there's research that's vital to understanding an organization. And when you do research, you will begin to learn about all those things I'm talking about, and it helps you build a relationship. So anyways, the one thought I really want you to walk away with is that growth is going to happen for you fastest and surest, right? Strongest when you focus on one agency. When you focus on one agency, you have the ability to capitalize on all of yesterday's efforts into tomorrow's planning so that your work is constantly building upon itself. When you focus on many agencies, you're not able to do that. Focus on one agency and your skills and your experience will start building upon each other. Hope that made sense. If the training today made sense and you found it valuable, give it a thumbs up. Give me a comment, direct message if you want, or put it in the chat if you have questions about what I talked about, or if I showed you something that maybe you want to get a copy of it, be happy to do that. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next event.